Hello, and I wanted to talk to you today about some more of my author journey. As we saw last week, part of my author journey has been learning about promotional videos and how to present information and add extra layers to what I already try and give my readers when they buy my book. Part of the difficulty in learning all of that stuff is that nothing always goes to plan. So I hope you were still able to kind of hear some of what I was talking about last week in my author journey. But this week, in preparation for my book launch of Coffee and Paper Cuts coming out on May 22nd, I wanted to talk to you, ironically, about the part of my author journey that involves the videos. So part of the difficulty when my first book came out is that we couldn't have a launch right away. We couldn't have a launch because it was 2020. It was May of 2020 when my first book came out. And it was difficult to do anything because nobody was going anywhere. And so I and my publisher promoted it online. We did an interview. We did a virtual launch online, like almost everybody at that time. And it was fun. It was exciting to be able to talk to everybody all over the world at the same time. But it wasn't quite, all that had to be done, because when you're not going anywhere, people need to hear and see things in real life. So I started to do something that I am going to blame my students for. Every time I teach my students poetry or difficult literature, they always ask me, how do we know that the writer meant to do that? Like, how do we know that they did that on purpose? Maybe the blue door is just a blue door. Maybe it's not anything else other than that. And so one of the things that I started doing for 3 or 4 weeks before my book release, and then every week after until I'd done them all, was something I call behind the poem stories. Now, a lot of the poems from my first book were written from all different parts of my life, similar to the book that is being released now, Coffee and Paper Cuts, where it is a variety collection of different styles and different topics. And I knew that because of that variety, some of those poems have stories behind them, reasons why I wrote them, when I wrote them, how I wrote them. And I decided to give my students and my readers just that little bit of extra. I love the DVD extras where the actors or the writers or the prop makers and the costume makers tell you about where their ideas came from or why they did what they did with the characters and the stories. And so I decided to do the behind the poem stories with each of my poems. Now, the very first video I made, it took me like 7 takes. I completely freaked out. It was that combination of where you have imposter syndrome and where you don't like the sound of your own voice. Nobody likes hearing their voice recorded. So that was really difficult, and it took 7 takes to get it right. I watched it all the way through and I could still barely get through it, still barely listen to it. And so I felt nauseous even contemplating putting it out there onto my Facebook page for my book, but I knew I had to. I knew it was something that stories that had to be told and things that I had to do in order to kind of add to my art. When you put art out there, there is a certain death of the author. There is a certain point where people will read things into your poems or your artwork that you didn't intend, that you never meant to have there. People will make judgments and have concepts about what you intended and what you didn't intend. But I had decided to put a little bit out there of what I actually meant to be in there, and hopefully that will add to people's reading and enjoyment of the poems, knowing a little bit of what's between the lines. That doesn't stop anybody interpreting whatever they find, whatever meaning and resonance they find in my work, which is why I write in the first place. But I'm hoping that it will add to. Now, after the release and as time passed and I continued to do and get more confident with the promotional videos, I then decided I wanted to bite the bullet and do what everybody had been telling me to do, which was expand on the different social networks. And so I created my YouTube channel. at the same time, because I was becoming more comfortable, I picked up my other hat and put on my teacher clothes, and decided to add interpretations of classic poems and readings, workshop like YouTube videos, instructional type YouTube videos on how to write a sonnet, the same exact way I teach it when I'm in class, or exploring haikus, especially when I started creating Chasing Apollo, using images to create haiku and tanka and renga, different Japanese forms. I decided to put out writing tips and how to use writing prompts and how to use images to inspire writing, because teachers got to teach. So my journey in building that was started with my Facebook page, translated and then added to by my YouTube page. And then the third layer came when I was doing open mic nights. Now, I have to blame my friend Gary for this. He is another poet who does a lot of work up in Peterborough, where he knows everybody in the poetry scene, and he runs tons of poetry events, pick and mix. You need to look it up on Facebook if you haven't. His events are fantastic, and he does tons of them, one of which I will manage to get to live one of these days, because I've been to the online ones. And he told me that I should be going to these online open mics, because again, in the middle of the pandemic, the online poetry open mic became a global affair. It became an epic bonus, an unexpected positive from all this tragedy and horror that was happening, all this pain and loss that we were all feeling. And then we turned it into something even more inspiring and fantastic than we'd all seen before. Every poet I've met on the poetry open mics online is amazing and inspiring. And one of the reasons why I have been able to complete this third collection is because they've kept me inspired. So Gary managed to, get me into the open mic night poetry scene. And I went to things like Fire and Dust Online, which have since published one of my poems in one of their anthologies. I continue to grow and change with Simply Dee's events, where they have published one of my pieces in one of their anthologies about all this life, all this crazy. So as you link and make other links, you learn more things about making videos, about promoting your art and promoting your work and getting exposure. I have met authors from 12 different time zones. I've bought their book, some of them have bought my book. And so all of that kind of adds up to expanding those different horizons through the use of technology and video and those kind of things. One of the poets on this open mic got me into Linktree, which of course enabled me to combine all of my efforts across all of my platforms and to add that to any video and any event, anything I'm doing. So it's always up to date. Now, these different things that we teach each other are part of all of our author journeys. And it continues for me to this day. It's really important that we share these little hacks and tips and ideas with each other, not just for writing, not just for prompting, not just for stories and contests and all of those things, but also so that we can share those places that we have, those ideas that we have, and add layers to what we share with each other. Now, I got better and better with the videos, and I still continue them. So you can check out my videos on Saturdays, behind the poem stories I post for Chasing Apollo and Coffee and Paper Cuts at the moment. All my previous videos from between hindsight and foresight are on my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, as are my writing tips and how to use the writing prompts that I put on my Facebook page and my Instagram all the time. So hopefully you'll be able to use all of what I've put out there to add to what all of you have put out there, and we can all join in these videos and these ideas. Last week, I told you my video from Birdies, which is where my book launch is going to be for May 22nd. So I'd like you all to register and join me at Birdies to celebrate my book launch on May 22nd. The tickets are free, and it's going to be a really nice party. So I'd love for you to come. The background picture for this video is the last book launch I had for Chasing Apollo. And I also held that at Birdie's because it's my writing place. It's where I go to do my writing to a live piano player. Sometimes it's almost completely empty, and sometimes it is packed with people on the dance floor and singing loudly and fabulously to just about anything that comes out of the piano. So you never know what it is. And it's always inspiring and always interesting. So first and foremost, join me at my book launch. I'll be doing book signing, raffles, competitions, and telling you about my work. More importantly, you'll get to meet other creatives and other people who are interested in poetry, and we can all join in having fun conversations and interactions about poetry and learning little tips about these videos. So I hope that you've enjoyed this little bit about my author journey, and that it's helped or been insightful for something. It's a little strange for me to be kind of sinking into myself, but I still wanted to share Birdies with you because it is my writing place. So I'll see you next time when I tell you a little bit more about my author journey and things that I've learned. Okay, take care.